we open our eyes, okay? We become Republicans, we elect Republicans to the House, we elect Republicans to the Senate who has to approve the president's appointments to the various benches and so forth. We have to work within the system of laws. We can't propose anarchy or any other sort of system. We have to impose things such as term limits that allow people to get elected. The power of that incumbency is terrible on this process. Just something like 98% of incumbents are reelected over the course of time. We've got to change that and make it more open, and I think some of the things we've talked about today give us that opportunity. So if there's a follow-up in particular, but I think it's electing people to office that then have and it starts with the president. We're going to have a shot. I saw a bumper sticker the other day that said, "Is it 2012 yet?" That's where it starts. And fortunately, folks, the people from West Virginia have voted in a conservative fashion at the national level. Now we need to take that down to the Senate and the House of Representatives level and bring in new people, and I think you're going to have a change on the bench. I think she wants to follow up.
Do you and everybody up there agree that the Constitution is an absolute document and not a moving, changeable, living document?
Thomas Jefferson had a quote that said that you have to have laws and institutions go hand in hand with the progression of the human mind. And all we have to do is look at something like slavery to understand that. So there are times when we do have to, things like DNA and trips to the moon and things like that were never even conceived at the time of our founding fathers. We have to take those sorts of things into consideration, but that doesn't mean that we just throw this document away. No, we go to this as the founding and read it within the four corners of the document. And when you're in law school, they talk to you about don't try to interpret and bring in other things from outside. No, read it within the four corners of the document and make the plain interpretations the way the language is written. Okay, that's where I would start with all my interpretations in the Congress or within the Constitution, and then work from there.
Okay, Cindy Hall, would you like to?
Well, with all the amendments, I guess the Constitution is a changing document, but we need to get back to the original document. The only way we can do that is change out Congress and have them more conservative, and the next time we elect a president, to have a conservative president that will hopefully be able to select a judge for the Supreme Court.
Patricia Levinson.
We need to consider the Constitution with the amendments, and I agree with Mac on many of those ways of looking at it. The amendment process is the way to maintain some flexibility within the original.
David McKinley.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm a civil engineer. But from what I understand, first let me answer your initial question. It's not a living document. I believe it's written in stone and should be held in stone. And one of the problems we had, from what I understand, it was I believe it was 1936 under Franklin Roosevelt, that in his effort to try to pack the Supreme Court, there was a decision, I believe it was United States versus Butler, okay? And that opened up the whole case here in this country of dealing with general welfare. The Constitution says twice in the terms general welfare. And until 1936, the legislature or the Congress and the president adhered to not spending beyond those issues that should be handled at the local level. Once that passed in 36, Pandora's box has been opened. And I would challenge in Congress that one of the things we ought to do is try to get that back before the Supreme Court. We can't take that decision back, but something comparable to that to find out, redefining what general welfare is. And is it a responsibility of the federal government to do all for everybody, or is it the states have some responsibility as well? Thank you very much.
Sarah Manier.
To my mind, the Constitution is something to live by. You call it a living document, but it's like the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are guidelines which enable us to live in a civilized society. The Constitution sort of served the same purpose. In fact, it's sort of hand in hand, really. I always take great offense when they, like you say, start moving it around to suit their purposes in the court. And probably the ACLU is the worst offender of all. And I have to tell you, it drives me nuts. It really does. But I don't know. A lot of these judge positions are filled by the president. And they're in there forever. It seems like you can't get rid of them once they're appointed. But anyway, I don't think it's an easy solution to fix this, except if you want conservative court system that interprets the Constitution as it's supposed to be and not move it to do what they want it to do, you have to vote for conservative leaders. The liberal leaders abuse the court system, and they abuse it mightily, to my opinion. Okay.
Tom Stark.
The statute that dictates what constitutes murder in virtually any state in the country is a fixed statute. It doesn't get interpreted 6 ways over the last 20 years. The Constitution is the supreme law over all the other laws. How in the world can you ever justify reinterpreting that based on social mores at the particular moment? So in answer to your question, it is an absolute document. There is a provision in it for changes that can be made as society chooses to change it, but it has to go through that process. In addition to that, by electing conservative leaders who take that interpretation of it to the Senate, particularly because they have the power of affirming court appointments, you can adjust the makeup of the court back to where it belongs, where there is no longer the risk of the 5-4 or 6-3 splits that can create problems. Mr. McKinley made reference to the decision regarding general welfare. There was also one about the same time period brought on by the Great Depression that took the other big pile of snakes out of the box with the Filburn decision, which dictated the interstate commerce clause, the spread that allowed Congress to do a lot more things with that. And that is used now probably 80 or 90% of the time to justify federal regulations. Both of those things took place during very extreme periods in our history, but there is nothing in any of those court decisions that says that Congress has to stretch it to the limits every time they vote on a bill. You know, if the representatives are interpreting the Constitution and following those principles and honoring their oath, then a lot of these decisions would never be made and these laws would not be passed.